All right, in this video, I want to talk about abortion. Not too long ago, I made a video talking about it and how Christians are hypocrites in the sense that they are against abortion, sometimes even to the extent where if the woman was raped or she's having complications where she could die, they would say, too bad, so sad, have the child anyway, right? Even if it was a child of rape and even if it's going to kill you, right? And some Christians, or I would say most, are not that extreme when it comes to abortion. But the hypocrisy comes in when the child is born and then they give their child over to the state through, Social Security, birth certificate, and what have you, putting them through the school system that basically teaches them there is no God, whether directly or indirectly telling them that, and feeds them pseudoscience to get them to think God can't exist and all this other stuff. And they basically give their children over to a mindset that ultimately ends up rejecting God, rejects Christianity, rejects Jesus Christ. And if they even are Christian, it's because they're cultural Christians, but to fit in with their family, not because they actually truly believe. So a person who had an abortion, the physical body of that child is dead, but the soul is saved because the soul of that child never sinned. So there's nothing that can condemn that child to hell. But you bring a child into the world and they go through the system and they reject God and they die and they go to hell. Which is worse, right? And I think that's pretty clear which one is worse. Not to mention some of these people who want people to have the child, even when the child would be in a very rough situation. Like, they don't care, have the child. It doesn't matter if you can't afford it and take care of it, have the child anyway. And it doesn't matter if that child is then unloved and uncared for, as long as it's brought into the world. That's all that seems to matter to these people. And then they'll say things like, oh, we would have had a cure for cancer, but that was the child that you aborted. Or I seen one where it was this famous soccer player that wouldn't have been in his position if his mother aborted him because his mother thought about doing it, but a doctor or a priest or somebody talked her out of doing it. And it was just kind of like, so it's a good thing that he wasn't aborted because then we wouldn't have a famous football player or soccer player. Whoop-de-doo. The world will be just fine without another soccer player. Like, that's so special. What if he's an unbeliever and he's going to hell? But, well, good thing he wasn't aborted because he's a famous soccer player. Praise God. Some of these things I find to be ridiculous and just straight up stupid. Right? But I understand caring about life, right? I'm not promoting abortion. I'm just not against it. I'm actually pro-choice. And I'm Christian. If you don't want one, don't get one. But that doesn't mean you should force others not to be able to have one. I understand if you think it's evil and what have you. But it's not right to force your beliefs on others. That's also evil. And if we want to go to scriptures, we can take a look at some things, right? There's not anything really directly talking about abortion, right? So we can't say anything like directly, right? But we can talk about things that happen in scriptures or in real life, such as miscarriages. That's not the father's fault, that's not the mother's fault, right? But miscarriages happen. Okay, so if that's wrong, why does God allow such a thing? Right? 'Cause I'm referring to this to like basically a pure and innocent life. Right? And it's all in God's hands, yet it dies. Right? Just something to think about there. Because we can also see things like David. When David took Uriah's wife and got her pregnant, she had a child, and the child was just a baby. And because of David's sin, that child was sick. And David was praying to God for the child's life, and the child died. It was an innocent baby. And because of David's sin, God allowed that child to get sick and die. Now, I got to ask you a question. Would it be worse if the child died while Bathsheba was pregnant? Or is it worse after it's born? If you ask me, if it's life, it's the same thing, right? So if it's okay that the child died as a baby, already born, then it's no different than as if it died while still in the womb. Right? Now, I'm not going to bring up the flood, because in the flood, I believe all flesh was corrupted, as it tells us in Genesis 6. So I'm not sure if Noah and his family were the only pure humans left at that time. Right? But I can bring up Sodom and Gomorrah. How many pregnant women and babies do you think were in Sodom and Gomorrah when it was destroyed? Do you think there was none? Because that's something to think about there. Another thing to think about is when God punished Israel, he warned them that they were going to end up eating their own children. Now, what to think about there is this. Do you think God is saying, your punishment is you're going to sin. Your punishment is sin. Do you think that's what it is? Because I don't. Because Jesus is God's son, and God gave him up for us to not literally, but metaphorically eat his flesh and drink his blood. And since Israel rejected Jesus Christ and to eat God's son, they ate their own children. And God sacrificed his own son, just like he asked Abraham to sacrifice Isaac. Do you think God was asking Abraham to commit a sin? That's something to think about. When you actually look at the scriptures, you can understand that the child is the property of the parents, namely of the father. And the father can decide if the child is going to live or die, as God did with Abraham and Isaac, and he did with his own son, Jesus Christ. Today's world gets things backwards, where it's like the children get to decide what the parents should do and not do, right? As if they're the boss, when they're completely ignorant and have no experience, but they get to run the show, right? We get everything ass backwards. And, yeah. messed up, right? Very messed up stuff. But again, if you're able to take the life of the child after the child is born and is even grown, and it's not a sin, then it would be no different if it was still in the womb. Again, I'm not promoting abortion and encouraging it. I'm trying to get people to calm down on condemning people. I know a lot of people, they have abortions because it's selfish, whether the father and or mother just don't want to take responsibility for their actions when they could very well take care of the child, right? But other times, that's just not the case, right? And even if it's for a selfish reason, it's free will. And it's better to not have a child brought into the world with parents that don't want it than to bring it into the world anyway. And you may say to give it up for adoption, my bad, adoption. And you can do that. But that's no guarantee that the child is going to be cared for and loved, because it seems to be that adopted children are more likely to get used and abused and mistreated than people's natural born children, especially if they end up in some kind of care system like an orphanage or foster care and stuff like that, right? So yeah, what do you think is better? Right? So, yeah, I just wanted to talk about that and get people to think about it. Because if it was such a big thing, you think there would be some clear stuff on it. But we actually have some information that doesn't actually condemn it at all. Actually leans towards it being acceptable. But yeah, it is what it is. I know some people will say this, well, there's nothing clear about homosexuality. I'll just cover that real quick. Where Jesus said that marriage is between one man and one woman, and any sexual intercourse outside of marriage is sin. So right there it condemns homosexuality. Romans chapter 1 talks about how men and women were given over to their lust to mess with their own gender, given over to a reprobate mind. And of course we have the Old Testament talking about it being a sin for a woman to lay down with another woman or a man to lay down with another man, right? So yeah, that's actually very clear, right? There's no confusion on that. And if there is, it's basically people not wanting to accept what the Bible actually has to say on the subject. But, yeah. And I don't know how many people would, discontinue fellowship with a Christian couple that had an abortion or support abortion. And I don't know how many couples would be broken up because of, let's say, the father wanting an abortion and the mother doesn't want to. So instead they break up a marriage for the child. And I guess some people would be okay with that, where God said what he put together, let no one divide, no one cast it asunder, right? Don't split it up. But for that reason, you can go do it, right? When the Bible only gives us one acceptable reason for divorce, for separation, and that is if one of the partners the husband or the wife is having an affair, a sexual affair with somebody else, that's the only legitimate excuse for a divorce. And of course, if one of them dies, then you're free to, if you want, marry someone else, right? But outside of that, if you get divorced, the Bible is clear that you are to basically remain celibate or reconcile with your spouse, right? So I guess if that's why you wanted to get divorced, it would be acceptable. But I think it's foolish in the end, because when you're married, you're one, you're together, right? And you're meant to grow old and die together, right? Now, if you split up because of the child, that child's going to grow up and they're going to go have their own family. And then what do you have? Nothing. You go and you marry somebody else, well, you're committing sin there because you got divorced from your husband, so you should stay celibate. But if then you're like, oh, I'm going to find some new one or a new wife, depending on what side of the fence you're on during this situation, then, yeah, right. So, what are you going to do there? I recently saw some stuff about married couples, and it was talking about these wives who side with the children over the husband. And it was Christian couples. And the wife disregards her husband for the sake of the children. And then when the children grow up and they go off to college or to start their lives, all of a sudden there's nothing left between the husband and wife, because the only thing that was keeping them together was the children. And now that the children are gone, they don't have a relationship, because one of them put the children first. The woman put the children over the father. So now that the children are grown up and gone, that couple ends up getting a divorce because they don't have a relationship, because it was broken, because it was all about the children. And that's the kind of mindset we think is normal today. It's about the children, about the children. Well, you're putting the children above the marriage, above the foundation that produced those children in the first place. The marriage and the father and wife coming together is the foundation for the children to be built upon. But then when you put the children as that foundation, well, you just destroyed everything. Because if the father and mother are built upon the children, once the children grow up and they go about their lives, there's no foundation for them anymore. There's no reason for them to even be together. They don't have that relationship because it was all about the children or the child. So I just wanted to make this video because it's kind of irking me. Kind of under my skin today. So, thank you all for your time and attention. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.